Andy Crestodina, are you ready to fearlessly question today?
I absolutely am, Joey.
All right, fantastic. I like the assertiveness, yet kind of calm, collect. I have a good feeling about it. I have a good feeling about it. Um, so, Andy, you might win the award for best dressed guest on the show. Every time you're looking relatively dapper. I don't know if that speaks to how well you're dressed or how poorly my other guests are dressed. I don't know.
I
It's
think it might say more about them than me, honestly. This is it's a shirt and a sweater. It's 20 below outside here. I'm in Chicago. Yeah, this is basic fare. Nothing special. I could have stepped it up more than this had I known that there was a competition.
well, I feel like it's understated, but yet it's classy enough to get by. And I don't know about two dudes talking about how each other is dressed, but we'll uh,
You got
we'll,
the
we'll,
tie
we'll
looking good. Yeah, let's. This is going to be a great podcast. Set the tone.
yeah, we're dressed for a podcast. Good thing people can watch this too, because otherwise it'd be for nothing. So,
Hmm.
um, the first kind of fake fearless question to you before we kind of get started, before we loosen things up here. What's something that you can't help but complain about, but hate yourself when you do?
Well, I'm a snob for websites, so I'm always ripping apart people's decisions in web design. There's yesterday I got on this long rant about how it's stupid that people put press releases on web pages. I hate that. I don't believe in testimonials pages on websites. I hate that. I think every page should be a testimonials page. So I kind of feel bad afterwards, but I will just eviscerate. I will skewer web design, bad web design when I see it, because I just think that people can do better without any extra effort. People can do better if they just apply a little more empathy. There's a lot of people and a lot of marketers are not too far away from getting much better results if they just thought about really what their audience wants.
I tell you, really, you jumped right over the bar. I was going for something even like lower. Like I'm thinking like it's so cold out right now. I hate complaining about the weather, but you just took it right to like super high professional level. So there's
Practical.
yeah. So but okay, well I will go with that. And why don't we go ahead and before we kind of really dive into the fearless questions, why don't you go ahead and catch everybody up? Tell us your story as it relates to fearlessly questioning proof.
Sure. So I am 15 years in this industry. I've been doing analytics and SEO since 2000. I've been doing content marketing and blogging and email since for the last 8 years. So I have been an advocate for years for making decisions based on evidence, and I'm constantly teaching people how to go look up the answer and make a good decision based on what is working on their current sites. But what we have to question, and you're good at this, is to make sure that the proof that we find, the evidence that we seek and come across on websites, and not just on websites, but also in people's bios, in our own personal brands, right? We can't just take that all at face value. It's really important for us to take a step back and reconsider the kinds of things that we see in our stats, in our sites, in our networks, and not just drink the Kool-Aid every time we're handed a cup.
Well, don't give me too much credit. I don't know how good I am at that, but I'll let that wash over me for a second. But I think that yeah, I think definitely too much Kool-Aid is not good for us. Um, so my first official real fearless question to you, if you are ready, um, would be how do we create proof that we can't see?
Hmm. Well, proof is created through trust, and trust comes from other people, other sources. So word of mouth marketing is always going to be one of the most powerful sources of truth, but you won't ever get to see it. Creating a good service is how we create proof, and how trust is conveyed from one source to another. If you're good at what you do and you take good care of people, you're never going to see the proof that actually happens. You're never going to be there when trust is really conveyed and when intention and credibility is born. So, but yeah, it's the trust that you can see that is often the stuff that is the least effective. I show people, like I mentioned, I show people all the time about how to go into their analytics and see what's working, what's not working, what they did that had which outcome, and how to make better decisions based on that. But like you and I talked about before, some of that stuff, there are limits, there are boundaries, and you can only get so much from analytics, and even there, we have to question that proof if it's visible or not.
That's an interesting angle that you took there. I was kind of coming at it from, and let me see what your thoughts are on this um, is finding how do we find that thing that doesn't necessarily have that path leading to it?
Well, this reminds me of the fact that when we get results from our work, we can only see the results that from the work we did. So, for example, nobody woke up at Apple and said, we need to create a new music platform so we can create a great music player so that we can then create the world's most popular phone. But that's what Apple did. There was no path to do that. There was no one there was no business analysis that told them that would have been, see, the problem is real innovation isn't visible in advance. You have to actually find that, and by questioning all your premises and saying, how can we create something new? Inventors they can't make decisions based on analytics, or there is no proof that they can find to support the decision that that leap of faith they're about to take. Is that what you were pointed toward there?
Yeah, kind of. It's like we're always looking for that, that bullet point, that Cliff's notes for that, kind of that pat on the back, that permission to go do this thing, or we're looking for somebody to tell us that we're not crazy. But in this kind of, hey, we have all this sort of information world, we find it hard to, like, we've kind of essentially blinded ourselves off from that ability.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. It's if you want validation in advance for a decision you're going to make, that validation is only going to be for the possible decisions that the world has imagined for you or that people around you are supporting. There's lots of things, nobody told us that we should start a web design company in 1999 and in 2000. That was not nobody suggested that to us. It was a moment when you have to just decide, like, what matters most to me? What combines my interests best? How can I create some value in the world, and to pursue that based on no validation?
And it kind of leads me, thank you very much, very nicely into my next question. And it would be, this idea is, has our kind of legitimacy obsession impaired our ability to kind of openly discover things?
I think that it probably has. I think that so I'm in Chicago, and so there's a huge startup community here and a lot of incubators and co-working spaces and people starting companies. Well, for years, it just seemed like everybody was trying to find the next Groupon. Groupon was the fastest growing company in the world. It's like it broke all the records and grew to $1 billion in 18 months or some crazy thing. So when people started with that premise, like, what's the next Groupon, you're really narrowing your data set, and you're trying to deconstruct a formula for success that is not going to you're not questioning the premise as deeply as you could. So I think you're absolutely right. I think that if you're looking for it based on proof, then you have a more limited set of outcomes.
What has kind of stifled that imagination, though? You have any idea?
I guess if it might be that proof that we were talking about, right? If your imagination is limited to the things that you know to be successful, the things that you have evidence for a certain outcome, then that's not as much. That's not nearly as imaginative as it would be. I think that there's a imagination comes from a vision. It comes from courage. It comes from internal passion. It comes from something that nothing would stop you from doing. This is all I care about. This is the only thing I want to do. I'm going to do this no matter what. That's when people are brave. That's when people follow their imagination and go create something that's new. So the thing that works against that, yeah, it's the what follows from the past rather than what's pulling me toward the future.
Yeah, and I mean, going back into my youth, I was a rebel's probably a strong word. I never had a mohawk or wore like a jean jacket with ripped sleeves or anything like that. But you and I both share a passion for music, and I use the analogy. I'm thinking, if I'm seeing a band in a club, like just some dive bar down the street, and if they sound great, do you have the imagination to hear hear that, like to know like this is really good regardless of its environment? And we get so caught up in the idea of social proof or presenting this image to make it be something that it may or may not be. It might be good, but I feel like people have lost the ability to kind of see that, and it's kind of makes me cry myself to sleep at night. But I mean, what are your thoughts?
Music is a great example because there are people who deconstruct. This is a popular country music song, or this is a popular pop song. There's even been projects where people have analyzed the beats per minute and the instruments and the tone and the topic and the voices and the lyrics of popular songs and written a song that met all those criteria. And they wrote what's called the most the most liked song. Have you heard this before? It sounds like a typical Celine Dion song. Then again, go look at the people who created a new genre, people that broke the mold, right? That takes guts. They were internally motivated. Look at a band like Wilco, or like anyone that started, that did something that was out of a passion, right? They weren't trying to follow in the footsteps of something else. So I think that the inventiveness, the innovation, I think that the drive comes from it's an internal motivation. It's less about analyzing external trends and deconstructing them.
Where does the reverse engineering line meet the originality line? Where does that kind of split? Because it seems like you can only go so far.
Well, it comes. I think commercial viability is right where you find that. If it, you can come up with something that's brand new, and if there's no overlap on the Venn diagram of I can get paid to do this and I love doing this, then, you know, there's your line. You really have to, at some point, if you want to make a living doing it. I love combining art and science. I want to be creative and technical and make something that's an experiential thing that I can point to and I did it. Yeah, building websites for clients is a way to do that. So, I found a way in my own life to create a lifestyle that is supported by this passion for these types of projects and type of work, but then also connects enough to a business outcome and adds some value where I can get paid to do it. So there is that line. It's the commercial viability and deconstructing possible success outcomes with inventive personal passions.
How did you find kind of your own balance? Because it seems like people want to be all or nothing on one end of the spectrum or the other. Yes, I just want to create it and just let it be this thing. It's just, oh, it's my art, or it's just I'm just so analytical. Because if I had to guess, if I was just like meeting you off the street today, I would say that you are on the far end of the analytical spectrum more so than the creative perspective. But as we've gotten to know each other a little bit, I kind of see that you've kind of maybe established a pretty decent balance.
I'm center-brained. I'm not an analytical guy anymore than I'm a creative guy. I'm someone who gets all of my motivation by being in the middle there. So a lot of people think of me as analytical because I teach all the advanced analytics classes and at conferences and stuff like that. But the execution of that leads to there being analytics to even measure was a creative impulse. I do tons of writing and tons of speaking, and like these are all creative outlets. Music is these are things where basically language breaks down like this. Speaking and writing are creative. Listening and reading are receptive. So anybody who's a content marketer, anybody who's creating content, you're creating content right now. This is a creative act that we're taking at the moment.
This is interesting because I'm gonna I don't know if disagree would be a strong word, but the active listening, I would think that could be very creative in some avenues.
What are you creating by listening?
Well, it's so when I say not physical, okay, so like you're not actually when you listen to something, you're not there's not like an outcome, there's not like a final product, but your ability to listen to things in a way that nobody else can, you're creating that experience to loop back around to what would eventually be that final thing. I don't know if that made sense.
No, it's an input. It's an input that you need for a creative output. But a listener, a reader, a viewer, these are input methods. And what you do with that once it's in your head, I mean, that's you can be inspired by it, but the act of, I mean, generally speaking, these are just. I was trained to be a language teacher. I was a foreign language major and studied pedagogy, and basically this is how it breaks down, right? There's parts of our brains that do different things, and the creative moment is when the person begins to speak or write, or you're actually producing an output of some sort.
A foreign language major, so that's
Sure.
I would have never guessed that. That's like what you set out to go into the world initially in, and then when did you find web design?
Well, I'm actually I was trained to be a foreign language teacher. I majored in Mandarin. I did 4 years in Chinese, and then lived in China, and I was totally obsessed with everything Chinese.
Any particular reason?
Because it's awesome. It's the same thing. It combines. I mean, every word in Chinese is a picture, It's incredibly interesting, and it's a hard. I wanted to learn a hard skill. I wanted to know that I knew a skill that I paid for college, and when I got out, definitely had learned something. So if I can go talk to an extra billion people on the planet, then I must have learned something. So I wanted to, not a technical thing, but it's kind of technical in a way. It's like you know it or you don't. You can prove to yourself if you learned it. But I had no idea how to use it, so I got certified to teach, and I did a lot of teaching in that. I was a docent for the Architecture Foundation here, and I just did classroom in China. I did classroom here, and it's ironic because the full circle story is that I'm basically a teacher now. Great content marketers, great marketers are teachers. What are we doing now? We're talking about lessons and learning and outcomes that can help other people. We're sharing stories that can get people to a different mindset or a new learning objective. So the irony is that even though I didn't become a teacher, I became a teacher, and I did so by first starting a web design company, and where I gradually took off hats and changed my role to where I'm mostly now just in a marketing role, and in that marketing role, I'm basically back to teaching.
Very interesting. Well, we might have to continue that listening debate at another time. I don't know if we're fully finished on that, but we are going to give you a break for a minute, let you kind of towel off, and turn the tables on everybody at home and ask the audience a fearless question of your own, something you've kind of always wanted to know the answer to, but we're a little unsure of the response. Now's your golden opportunity.
Well, this is a challenge, and it's a very difficult one, and not everyone who hears this will probably be able to go this far into it, but in every industry, there are questions that nobody wants to ask, that people are afraid to ask. The question because they don't know what the answer will be, or they're afraid the answer will be something that's negative. But they're important questions to people, right? People want to know the answer. So I would challenge everyone who's listening to look for and find the question that people are unwilling to ask in your industry, and answer that question on your website with a piece of content. Sometimes it's about pricing. Sometimes it's about ethics. Sometimes it's about sustainability. Sometimes whatever it might be about, right? Go ahead and ask that question and be one of the few. You will instantly separate yourself from the rest. Be one of the few who had the guts to ask the tough question in your field, and put the answer out there and just see what happens.
I really enjoy that question because let's put it this way. Being able to identify that question, would that not be like hurdle number one in and of itself?
Yes, it is.
Is that like kind of I feel like you were like doing this with your fingers secretly under the table, like you're just kind of like, yes, that's why I asked it. Is that kind of true? I feel like your mad scientist moment.
Well, I mean, people actually should know it right away. I mean, if you just heard that and you wondered, like, is that, I think that might jump out at a lot of the listeners. But in our industry, a lot of people are just afraid to talk in a forthright way about pricing. We do web design. How much does a website cost? There's this massive range of what determines the cost of a website, and expectations are all over the board. It's a very simple one. It's not an ethical question, but I can give you other examples. I did some content marketing work with a local aquarium, and we also work with the Lincoln Park Zoo, right? Are captive animals happy? Put that one out there. Answer that question, right? Take on the big question, right? It takes guts, but everyone has the opportunity to step up and slay a dragon. I mean, anyone can do this. You just have to have more honesty than everybody else in your field, which is not hard, because most people aren't that. They won't try it. So, what about you, Joey? What's the question that people are unwilling to ask in your industry?
Well, good question. I've actually been cited for being a person who has answered a couple of these questions from time to time. But for everybody that I'm sure people know it by now, but I do work for my family's insurance agency, 9 to 5, and I would say there's probably two. One is obviously pricing, which is pretty easy, and I feel like if you can't address the pricing hurdle, I mean, just go ahead and pick a date when you're going to lock your doors up, because I mean, let's just be honest here. It's just let's get serious. But I think more than that, I would say the question is what happens when what we do now becomes irrelevant. Meaning, like our job is to add value and build a relationship, and that can't scale, or eventually technology will catch up to us and we will become obsolete. And so, what does our role then become? Then, do we go away, or do we create something new for ourselves?
Mm-hmm. So your assumption is that the industry will be disrupted, which is a good assumption, and the premise is then to try to predict what would happen next and to tackle an issue that nobody in your industry wants to talk about. Nobody wants to say that, right? This it happens in every industry, and it turns out that the companies that were best suited to adapt themselves, companies with resources and time and team to take on those questions, didn't do it, and then someone else won, right? Somebody else became the big player.
Yep, I would say just ask Blockbuster because I believe they had an opportunity to buy Netflix for what would be pennies on the dollar at this point in time. But yeah,
Sure.
I'm sure they're doing well now.
And look at Netflix. Netflix, I don't know how many DVDs come in your mailbox, but compare that to the number of movies that you stream. Netflix pivoted. They saw it. They changed. They tried to make it a separate brand. They fell down on that. They went back to their unified brand, but they did not have fear when they questioned their own premise, and they saved themselves from becoming obsolete with another. I mean, if Netflix was just based on the U.S. Postal Service today, they would not be where they are. There's no way.
Right, and I mean, believe me, I think my dad was probably like customer 5 for Netflix. I mean, I sort of got like I've had DVDs come into our mail like as long as I can remember. But you're right. I mean, having the ability to again, this is really getting back to the. It's amazing that we came full circle here. I'm going to connect the dots, but it's having that ability to see where to go next without somebody telling you, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly right.
Very good example. So I'm glad we could provide a little workshop there for everybody. I'm going to squeeze in a quick question from Sean here for you, a little off topic, but from your what you kind of said about your teaching in China, he wants to know what age group of the boy can you say that word? I don't even know.
Pedagogy. Pedagogy, the study of learning. Yep.
Okay.
7 through 12. So middle and upper school, or middle. What is that? Middle school and high school. We say here in the U.S. That. At the time, this was in the mid 90s, so at the time there was not a ton of stuff out there about, we had to make our own teaching materials. So that was fun for me too. I got a creative outlet because I got to kind of make workbooks and textbooks and find things that, create all of our own lesson plans and all of our own exercises. Teachers in well-established subjects can go buy off the shelf a big book full of lesson plans or, the teacher's manual. But it was really, really fun. In China, I taught mostly college students, but in the U.S., when I came back, it was just for a couple of semesters. But I taught 7 through 12 at middle school and high school. Language learning is really, really fun to teach because you learn how your first language has all these things built in, all these little predispositions and definitions and lines around things and borders, when other languages maybe don't have that. So we learn just how language is in some ways deterministic. The things that we get from our first language affect how we think about things. When people who have a different first language would think about things differently. So it's just really interesting how language learning actually has the ability to skew our perceptions a little bit. And when you learn a new language, you start to question those initial perceptions. And it's really fun to see that happen in the eyes of a learner.
I'm not sure what this says about me, but of all the things that I could or could not have learned or have wanted to learn or not learn, another language has been probably at the bottom of just about every list. Like I don't know, it just does not like it punches me in the face every time. I don't know if it just speaks to my incompetency, but you can hate me a little bit secretly for that, Andy, if you'd like.
Not at all.
I don't know if you have any insights as to why I might be so inept in that area.
Well, it's circumstance. I wouldn't say that it's inept. I mean, there is no point at which anyone loses their language learning abilities. You can learn a language at any age. You can learn, it's just circumstance. So if you fell in love with a woman from Portugal, you'd probably pick up some. Let's not talk. Your wife would be upset, but you'd learn Portuguese. This
secretly learn Portuguese.
It's just circumstance. So if in a different situation, in a different country, in a different background, with different context, you would have definitely picked up a language. If your job had pushed you to, spend 6 months a year in Colombia, you'd know Spanish today. But no, it's priorities. And as Americans, we have this luxury of of English being the most popular foreign language around the world. So we can be a bit lazy with it. The risk is that we lose that opportunity to learn about ourselves through learning a second language. But it's not. I wouldn't feel bad about it.
Well, thank you. I'll sleep a little bit better tonight knowing that. But we'll put this thing back on the rails a little bit and get back onto the whole proof thing. And my next question is, I'm interested in this. Should we kind of waste time getting someone else's version of proof, or instead be creating our own?
It's not a waste of time to get proof from third parties. There are power and influence comes partly from the trappings of authority. You believe the judge because he's got the black robe on. Your doctor's got 2 letters at the end of his name. These things give them credibility. So it's not a waste of time to do that. Certifications, awards, all those things that lend credibility by adding what we call, social proof. But we have to take them with a grain of salt. Anyone who got a law degree, they're less impressed with the JD than everyone else. People that have an MBA, they're slightly less impressed with the MBA than everybody else because they know what it took to get it, right? They know that they had some bad professors. They know that there's slackers that make it through. But it's not a waste of time. It lends credibility, and there's return on that investment of effort. And for a lot of people, it works really, really well.
If we do have any MBA listeners in the audience, I will preface I don't have an MBA, but I'm about as least impressed with it as they are.
That's not uncommon. Some people like it.
But yeah, so if you don't want to listen to the show anymore, I understand. I took a shot at you, but anyways,
I don't have an MBA.
You don't have, well, it's okay, good. So we can still be friends, Andy. I appreciate that. Well, okay. Not exactly the answer I was thinking, but I like it. So I guess the only counter question I would have to that, or follow-up question, would be, is the way that I was thinking about it is should we not spend maybe more time, like I said, because we have the ability today with content, with our ability to communicate directly with the people we're trying to reach, to validate our proof firsthand. When we can do that, why do we need anybody else's, I guess, is my question.
Because so as a marketer, here's 2 words you cannot use in marketing. Trust me. I can't just tell you to trust me, right? Trust doesn't come from me. I can't. Sure. Yeah. So third-party endorsements.
Right, so take the words "trust me," but then you expand that into the work that you're creating, like that. It takes 100 blog posts. That's what you're saying. Trust me with that is your trust me. So I guess that's my point.
No, you can demonstrate expertise and build trust directly with no third-party endorsement, simply by being a thought leader, by putting out information that's useful, by helping people directly. The first person who was trusted had to create that from somewhere. The person was reliable and good and delivered on a promise. Now they have trust; they can pass it to someone else if they believe in that other person. But sure, no. It's a shortcut. We borrow the trust of that endorsement. If we get the MBA or the JD or the MD or whatever that certification is, or you're basically taking that third-party voice and adding it to yours, creating kind of an arrow to yourself, saying I'm legit, I must be, I went through these steps. But you're absolutely right. It's possible. You can, I've written 270 articles about web marketing. I wrote a book about it. I speak at conferences. People get the book and they read it and they judge me based on that. I don't have any letters after my name. And if that works, then that trust was born simply by demonstrating expertise.
Well, we can share a high five sometime in real life for not having letters after your name, because I'm definitely a fan of no letters. My last and final fearless question to you, Andy, is what is the most unconventional source of proof that you listen to?
Well, the biggest validation in my life, the thing that I'm most grateful for and that I know that I'm on the right path, proof for myself, is something that does not appear in my analytics and might surprise you to hear, but I'd encourage everyone to focus on this one thing. If you do this right, everything is going to be fine. How many handwritten thank you notes do you get in a week or in a month? If I get handwritten thank you notes from people that I help, from clients, from people that I meet with, companies that I mentor or teach, or I'm giving my advice away, I know that I'm doing something correct. I'm making a difference. Nobody's ever told to write a handwritten thank you note. In fact, it's out of character based on our culture to get out an envelope and lick a stamp and send a letter like that, right? But I get a regular, I'm very proud to say this, I get a regular, steady stream of handwritten thank you notes from people that I've met with and helped. And that, to me, is the greatest proof that I'm making some kind of difference. There's no chart in analytics that shows these, but that's my favorite type of proof, is that little thank you that comes via U.S. Post and I really live for that.
Well, Andy, I can safely say that you also win the award along with Best Dressed Guest of the guest who has made the host feel the most worthless for not one receiving any handwritten thank you notes, and two for also reminding me of how I am not sent any either. So
Well, you get what you give. Send some out. Send one out. You know,
yeah,
send one a week. It's a mind blower, right? You're gonna be a completely unique person in that person's day if you just send a handwritten thank you note.
there's two really, really large obstacles in the way of that happening. One is my handwriting. Two is the U.S. Postal Service and me being borderline agoraphobic and not leaving the house. So those are some challenges I'll work on. I'll ask myself those fearless questions after we get off this call, but
Okay.
we'll see what I can do.
Good luck with that, Joey.
Well, thank you, Andy. I appreciate your support. I do appreciate you also taking the time for being here. It was a lot of fun. Where can people find out more about you and possibly write you a handwritten thank you note?
Orbitmedia.com has an address where anyone can send me, there's a postal address there. I don't expect to get any from this conversation, although this was a lot of fun. The blog is there. You can find the book there. We have a bi-weekly newsletter where I give away my best marketing advice every other week. We work really, really hard at that. But yeah, I'm also on Twitter. I'm easy to find. My Twitter handle and all my accounts are closely connected to my last name, which is long and weird. Crestodina. You can see the spelling there in the lower third. Crestodina. Just very easy person to reach.
And I also have to admit to everybody that I butchered your last name horrifically before the show started, so I apologize for that. Being somebody who has his name butchered on a daily basis, I feel bad when I have to return the favor to somebody.
Say yours once. Let's hear it.
Giangola? You didn't. I should have made you say it first, but yeah, Giangola.
I bet people miss it all the time.
I say it's like gin, like to drink, goal, like you're playing soccer, and you just add an A. So I just keep things simple. Andy, that's it. I will let you get out of here. I will remove myself from your life. I appreciate you again having the time here to talk with us. It's been a blast. We will catch everybody on the next one. Take it easy, everybody.
Thank you, Joey. Take care, guys.